This is for our copper wire wrapped bracelet. I'm actually using Vintage Artisan Copper Color. I like the vintage wire. And this is 18 gauge. First thing we're going to do is straighten out the wire. And I'm going to cut 3 sections that are 8 inches long. You can use your nylon jaw pliers to straighten the wire. A lot of times, especially with this, I just use my fingers to kind of straighten that out some. And then we'll measure and cut. And you can just have a ruler that sits on your workstation. Cut it at 8 inches. You're going to want to make sure when you cut it, use your flush cutter, and you want to make sure the flat side is where you're cutting toward the wire you're going to be using. So you have your flush side, and you'll cut your wire so that the flat end is the piece you're going to be working with. I've already cut mine into sections, so you have your piece, your flush cut, and you'll cut it right here. And that'll make that end flat that you're going to work with. And then I'll turn around and cut the other end flat. So I've already cut the 3 sections of wire. And the next thing I'm going to do is actually just go ahead and put a loop on the end of each one of these. It's just going to be a simple loop, or making like an eye pin. So, and I'm going to make them rather large to start. And that way I just have the loop to hold any beads or anything that I put on. Adjust your pliers and just bend that back a little bit, and you'll have your eye loop at the end. And this is the start of the project. This is going to have coiled wire that goes around the bracelet pieces. The middle wire is going to be what has the beading on it. So just the outer 2 wires, the 8-inch pieces that we've cut, will have the coiled wire around it. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can do that by hand and just coil the wire around these pieces. Or you can use a coiling thing. I forget the name of it. It's probably close to coiling thing. And I actually have, it's just 2 parts, fairly simple. I actually clamp this to my desk or my workstation, wherever I'm at, that holds it in place. And then you have this piece, which goes, you have a smaller section and a larger one for 2 different sizes. And you actually just start the wire on it, twist it onto here to hold it in place, and you start here, and you just turn, and it automatically coils the wire for you. That's the faster way to do it, and then you would just thread your coil onto this part. Makes it pretty simple. I'm using 22 gauge, and this is the same thing. It's Vintage Artisan Copper Wire. This is a smaller wire. It's the same color. You can use different colors to give you some contrast. For this one, I'm using the same. And you'll do the same thing. You'll basically just straighten out some wire. You leave it on the spool if you want to, or you can cut a large section. A lot of times it's easier to go ahead and cut a large piece. And you'll make sure and use your flush cutters and make sure that it's flat on the end. Now usually when I do this by hand, which I don't do often, so bear with me, you'll want to start part way up your wire, not at the very end of the wire and try to start coiling. You'll want to leave some space, because you can always, when you get the coil going and have better control of it, coil back down the other direction. And just start out with wrapping this wire, the 22 gauge around your 18 gauge, and just get a tight loop on there. And once you do, you can start wrapping that. And you can actually bend out this piece a little bit so that you can hold it as you're going. This will help give you some control so the wire doesn't just keep spinning around. And then just push with your finger or your thumb and do it whichever way feels comfortable for you. Some people like to do it around the other way because they feel they have more strength and control. And the hardest part is actually just getting started. And if you mess up and get a little loose, just pull it back, pull it tight. You almost want to pull like you're going past your coil, your last coil. When you come around, it'll actually even out, but it helps you get a really tight grouping. And you can just keep going around. And like I said, just whatever way feels comfortable for you. I've seen it done a lot of different ways. And you can just push that together if it looks like it's starting to get a little loose. And then once you get this further down, you can go back, turn it around, and you can finish out the coil you have with this piece of wire. And just move that up, pull it around, and you'll do the same thing. Now the other way to do it, like I said, is if you have the coiling wire thingamajig, and just do that. And I'll go ahead and do the coil for 2 of my wires. These are going to be the ones on the outer edge of the bracelet. The inner section, the middle section for the bracelet, is actually going to have the beads on it, so we won't coil wire on there.